This is day 2 of the February 91 7-day retreat at Springwater. I've collected a number of questions that I've written down, some of them combinations of similar questions. And we'll see which one to start with. I have not decided. It is hard for me to come to retreat. And when I'm here, I find I'm waiting for mealtime to come, or rather the last day, so I can go home. I don't know why it is so hard to be here, because I also want to come to retreat. But in the years that I've done it, nothing really has happened. Being here, there is a lot of boredom. Lots of thoughts are in my head constantly, and I'm wondering what I'm doing this quiet sitting for. If someone new came here who never had a spiritual practice before, would you give them one? I'm also wondering how one would do without it. If I don't concentrate on the breathing with a real effort of will, which is necessary to stem the tremendous power of habit, I get lost in thoughts and fantasies, which a more general kind of unfocused awareness seems to bring about. Concentration provides me the energy to be aware. In sitting, I feel discontent. And I'm wondering whether discontent reveals itself as one is sitting quietly. It's probably there during most of one's daily life, but now sitting quietly, it becomes much more noticeable. What is discontent? And is there fear in this discontent? I have a feeling like being squished, like I have been feeling mostly throughout my life. I can see how I'm going on with it by thinking about it, feeling dominated, powerless, inferior to others, as I have since earliest childhood. I wonder if I am retrogressing. Sitting in the waiting line before coming in here for a meeting brings up memories of going to confession. I find that my old Catholic training still affects a lot of my daily life. Guilt about doing wrong, getting angry, and so forth. Recently, in connection with some practice I have engaged in, I feel a great need for devotional activity like bowing, prostrating, expressions of compassion, humility. And I'm wondering if I'm missing something here where we don't do any of this. Doesn't it take choice and willpower to stay with awareness and not to go with the habitual reveries and fantasies. Since it is very early in the retreat, counting by days, maybe we'll start with this thing so many people experience, having looked forward to retreat, wanting to come here, and then being here and wondering why one has come here. Boredom, buzz of thoughts in the mind. Discontent, waiting for something to happen, and the frustration in reflecting that nothing has happened in the past. One person that just comes to memory right now said, I seem to, every time I come here, have to go through thinking what it is that my job is here. And it doesn't mean the working job, what I have to do when I sit down. I seem to have to go through this. Do I have to do this every time? It seems to be like that. And then, of course, the boredom. Can we look at this? Sitting down already with some expectation of something to happen, something to do with oneself, which is our habitual way of living, having to do something and doing it or resisting it. And of course, in most of our life as participants here right now, most of our life is filled with things we have to do, activities, work, recreation, family. Always doing, stimulation galore, positive and negative. And the mind, the brain, the body being used to this stimulation, used to it, or we can say addicted to it. Addicted meaning habituated to it, and therefore in need of it, to keep feeling the way one is used to feeling. Because if I'm not feeling the way I'm used to feeling, I think something is wrong with me. Because everything that we're used to or habituated to becomes some kind of a security, even if it's painful. If we're used to it, this is how it is. Don't have to worry about a change, something feeling different. And if something feels different, then there's worry or discontent, insecurity. What is this? And yet it is quite obvious, isn't it, that in coming into a period of silence with other people, stillness, still sitting, no talking most of the time, maybe 10, 20, maybe 50 minutes a day, and listening to maybe 50 minutes or an hour. That's maximum 2 hours out of 24 of not talking. We're talking most of our waking hours. Talking and the stimulation of that, listening to the spoken word, to the radio word, the television sounds, the traffic noise, the children. I could go on and on, what this body-mind is bombarded with all day long, and also is in the process of bombarding others with. That has established a strong habitual pattern which regulates all the 10,000 chemicals within the body, which are used to be called for, stimulated, mobilized, and then do their thing and keep the body in action. And with a great part of this not being there on the first day of a quiet retreat, second day, the body may be described as in an acute state of withdrawal. People who have been on withdrawal treatment from drugs may know about this particular phase. But we all go through it when we come here. There's something very unusual, different. The absence of used to stimulation, activity, engagement. And it's still be expected to happen, maybe in some different disguise, something to happen. Because we're always doing something for something to happen. Or just to forget about feelings and emotions, shove them through activity, shove them down, keep them suppressed. And now in a more relaxed state of not engaged in activities, feelings, emotions surface. That's the other part, the withdrawal part, and new things coming to the surface that are usually shut out in our normal, in quotation marks, way of living. Maybe talking about it in this way, in a talk or in meetings, private or groups, helps to be with it, not to think is something wrong with me, or trying to escape from it. Noticing the also habitual assumption being there somewhere that the way I feel now, I'm going to feel for the rest of today, for the rest of the retreat. I don't want to feel like this for 7 days. What's the use? And so forth. To distrust those comments, those taped comments or programmed comments in the brain, which constantly tell us something about ourselves. What we are, how we feel, how long it's going to last, that there's no hope, or maybe there is hope. And dangling expectations in the form of thought, idea, and imagery. Expectation is also an addiction, to expect something to happen. And then sit there or walk there in expectation, which is a very palpable state of mind and body. Palpable meaning if one comes to and isn't caught up with the content of the expectation, but feels the mode of expectation throughout the mind and body. There's something very interesting to just feel out or listen to. How a body-mind is experienced, that is expecting something. One person said, I find moving forward, wanting to get something, in my posture, If one notices that, or some tension in the fingers or body, if one notices it, maybe one can wonder whether it has to continue, because there's nothing to be expected. There's only what is here. Expectation is something extra, which is not necessary. It's a habit, but it's not necessary. But to see what it means to us to have this expectation dangling to whet the appetite, or feel that there's some sense in what I'm doing now for the sake of what's going to happen to me later, in this retreat, or at the end of my life, or in another lifetime. The mind can infinitely expand the duration of what's going to happen, what I'm expecting to happen. And that thought cluster affects the body and mind, and that can be felt without needing to enter into the content of it. It's when this shift occurs from engagement in the content of our thought to experiencing thinking, thought, emotion, as they're linked with each other, triggering each other. And listening, feeling the body that is thus mobilized, stimulated. And wondering about the whole thing. Not it shouldn't be there, or it must stop, or it should go on, but one can wonder whether it has to continue the way it has continued, as long as one can remember. And clearly, this expecting body that we're talking about right now, and has just noticed expectation, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's wind, airplanes, people. There's breathing, maybe very gentle. Maybe not gentle, because one is expecting something, sort of panting for it. It's not wrong. It's just to be noticed, to be felt, listened to, observed. All I've heard or read sometime in our past, words like, there is no place to go, everything is here, truth is a pathless land. What does it mean? To attain to that state in the future where everything is here, or where truth is a pathless land. That's not what that means. One can interpret it that way. But can one feel the impact of this interpretation, which posits time to get someplace, and with that the absence of being here with whatever's there? Every expectation, every fantasy and reverie is, well, we have to be careful. I was going to say, is away from what is happening right now, although this fantasy itself is happening right now too. But it projects something in this video room, video space in the brain, which is enclosed and not in contact with what is going on in sensations, feelings, right now. It's an enclosed space, just like when we watch a movie and are completely absorbed in it. And there's a shutdown of everything else. But what is going on right now beside this tape, the tapes that are running? And one may notice that in this shift of mode to listening, feeling, sensing, the thoughts don't have the same power of absorption or of creating time. They're just one of the things that is going on, or may even cease while there is listening. Not only the thoughts may cease while there's listening, but there's an opening up. It's not this enclosure in this dark room with artificial light. I don't know why we come here. Everyone may have a different kind of a reason, history, goal, motive, or maybe they're all very similar. But whatever it was that brought us here, we're here now. And what does it mean to be here now? As little children, that's all we are, is here now. That's the beauty and joy of being with little children before they are pressed into the time frame, the concentration frame, pay attention to this and not to that. The frame of keep yourself busy, do something useful. Don't just play around. Until that happened, and it may happen earlier and earlier for children as education sort of tries to rope kids in early, because the brain is so active, can learn so quickly. Until this social pressure starts, there's no problem with being here and now for little children. That's why for many of us, some of us may have had a very sad and traumatic childhood, but for many of us it seems like sort of a light space in memory when one was still a child. Remembering playing all day or going to the zoo in sunlight with time and no one saying, hurry up, which means no time pressure. That's what is so upsetting to parents or teachers, that kids don't have this sense of time. So there's a barrage of get ready, get going, come on, move, let's go. It comes at children if one listens to it in stalls or wherever, or even on walks. Parents are trying to drag kids and dogs along. Dogs also want to take their time, and they're always pulled. That's why they want to break loose and roam freely. In all simplicity, one can ask, can't one, what does it mean to be here? And not go into any kind of desired utopian description, but look, feel, listen. Stop whatever one is engaged in, because the question has come up. And the question probably has come up because there is a moment of awareness. A moment of awareness that there's been thought trains on and on and on. And then a moment of awareness comes. We're asking each other, I'm asking people this when they report about it. Did you will that? Did you intend that to wake up? And usually people say, no, it just happened. That's all I can say is it happens. And then, of course, very quickly comes the intention I should keep awake. And then one thinks I have willed to be attentive. But first comes a moment of waking up, and then the idea I should carry on with this, which is having already entered another train of thinking what I should be doing. A programmed train. We talked about that earlier. Always having thought, I should be doing something useful with my time. I should get someplace. And for doing that, I have to exert some willpower. That comes after there has been a waking up. Or it can also happen without any waking up, just thinking I should be really paying some attention here. But I wonder if that thought would occur if there hadn't been a moment of attention, where one realizes one has been dreaming. One can look at that, wonder about this. Because we mix up cause and effect. Saying I have to be more attentive, we think that causes attention. But it came after a moment of attention, which revealed dreams having taken place. So with that we come to this other question which has surfaced here for several people about concentration, a concentrative practice. I find someone says that only with strong concentration, which comes through practice, can there be some awareness of all the minute intricacies of breathing. Images of self rising and falling, the impermanence of it, maybe the selflessness of everything, and the suffering that comes if we cling. This only has come, these realizations have come to me, the person said, through strong concentration on the breathing. Whereas if there's this unfocused awareness, I'm just lost in reverie, fantasies. It's a difficult question to go into. comes up all the time, and also since I have repeatedly said that in unfocused, open awareness there is no effort, there's no concentration, then what is said to me is, yes, but you had long training in concentration. What if someone hadn't had that training, didn't have that training? Actually, thinking back right now, I haven't done that before. Thinking back right now of coming to the Zen Center, I had good concentration. Right away. I'm not saying that to put myself forth, I'm just looking at it. Particularly thinking of people who would come when I started teaching there, who would come and ask me, maybe after years of working there, how can I improve my powers of concentration? I just can't concentrate. I lose it. Can you help me to concentrate? And some people coming there and immediately being able to count from 1 to 10 and only lose it, well, whatever the criterion was, 20% of the time or 50%, some criterion. So, some people can concentrate better than others from the beginning. Who knows what the beginning is, but when they start this thing. And yet, I'm quite sure that in practicing concentration, like one practices any skill, with the mind or with the body, it can be improved. Practicing concentration can probably improve concentration. Granted, it's so. Quite sure about it. But now the question comes, improving one's concentration so it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, is that sort of a precondition for waking up, for having an open mind, for seeing directly, being here and now, being in touch with what's going on inside and out? Is there a cause and effect relationship between having practiced concentration and improved one's concentration? Being now able to minutely observe aspects of breathing, whatever it was that was mentioned. For that we would have to look at the concentrative process as one is engaged in it, wouldn't one? And we're free to do that. We're free to look at anything. Nothing is out of reach or taboo to look at, investigate. And it works the better, the less prejudiced we are for or against it. If we want to prove that concentration is good, we're already biased. If we want to prove it's bad, we're already biased. So can judgments drop away as we're looking at what happens in concentrating on something, the breathing, or counting the breathing? What is involved in it? Why am I doing it? Am I already doing it because I want something? I want to improve. I want a stepping stone to a higher state. I've been told that this is what it is, so I do this because this will get me that. I'll be a better person if I concentrate more and maybe come to enlightenment or awakening. And I need willpower to pursue it. And what is willpower? I want something. I want something that I imagine or think about will be very good for me, or maybe all sentient beings. I'll include everyone. But I want it. And because I want it, I have to put energy into getting it. Is that what willpower is? Putting energy into getting what I want, what I imagine I can get, what other people have held up to me, held out as a possibility for me, a goal in the future. Also telling me that I won't get it unless I put a tremendous amount of effort and energy into it. Sacrifice, pleasure, sleep, food, sex. And all the while, this, what we've been calling the me structure, is operating and is getting strengthened, isn't it? Reinforced by success and squished by failure. Then it picks itself up again, saying, I can do it. Others have done it. I must achieve it. I'm sort of exaggerating right now, but I'm just looking at this whole specter. And each one has to do it for ourselves, don't we? This looking, as it happens. So the question is, as the breathing itself becomes very clear in this concentration, in this energy, applied energy, is there also awareness of the me structure that is sort of the underpinnings of the whole thing, the foundation of it, providing motive, power, goal? Can whatever energy is invested in concentration open up to looking at this structure too? Looking at whatever's there. Here, now, right now. And of course the breathing is there. It doesn't need to be concentrated on. It's there. But it doesn't have to occupy a central place. Even though, please let me say, if one is doing this as one practices any skill, for whatever reason, then it has the same raison d'être as anything we practice. We need a concentrating mind for a lot of tasks. Adding at a cash register needs concentration, although we can become very automatic with our fingers. But many mental and physical tasks like athletics need powerful concentration. So why not practice this like anything else if one feels one needs it and knows what one needs it for? But to establish a cause and effect relationship between strong, powerful concentration and awakening to a state of no division, that is just speculation, assumption. It may not be true at all. The two may have nothing to do with each other. Because the one, the concentration, is intimately intertwined with self, wanting. And the other is not. It sheds light on self, how it operates. And light shedding on self, how it operates, does not reinforce it. It just reveals it in all its painful as well as pleasurable aspects. Now, the person who talked about this said, that's what I saw in concentrating on the breathing, how clinging to things produces pain, and that everything is fundamentally without self, ephemeral, coming and going, without duration. But one can also hear so much of this teaching and find it so clear, it's so convincing, that the clarity of the thoughts about it may masquerade for clearly seeing that it is so. Which I'm not judging for any one person who says I'm seeing it. I'm not saying you're just thinking that. I'm just suggesting to check into it. And can one see the difference between clear thinking and seeing something clearly? There's a difference. I remember when I used to read Alan Watts, everything was so clear. But it must have been the clarity of thinking about things. I don't know. So just to leave that open, find out what it means that everything just comes and goes. Arises and disappears. Does one see something arising? And when it's finished, is it finished? This instant? Then thought, thinking, oh, something had arisen and now it's finished, establishes the relationship. Something came and went. That's already thought engaging in describing what happened in retrospect. But when something is there, there it is. It's just what it is. And when it's not there, it's not there. You didn't say that. It's just nothing. And what was there before is a thought, a remembrance, linking up in time, establishing a process which may not be a process. Thought may make it so. We can question all of that, can't we? I remember right now a saying of a Japanese Zen master which deeply impressed me when I heard it, because I couldn't understand it at all. And that saying was that firewood does not turn into ashes. This is not what it is, isn't it? Well, of course firewood turns into ashes. Take a log, put stuff under it, little kindling wood and paper. You light it, and if the fire takes, and slowly this log will catch fire, it'll turn red, and it'll turn black, and then it'll turn white, and it'll collapse, and there are the ashes. And how can I say that? I remembered the whole thing right now. And the remembrance establishes this process, that firewood indeed does turn into ashes. But at the time of hearing it, I was intrigued by it. I didn't hassle or argue with it. I just kept it there. And since we often went camping, I watched firewood a lot. And if we're really here, without thinking, just here with what's there, the firewood, then there's only whatever's there. There's no process. The heat, the smoke, the gold, the black, but it doesn't need to be linked in memory at all. It's always just what it is. And asking in the light of the question that we started out with, did that take concentration to do that? I don't know what it took, but it took great interest in it. And that statement had sort of kindled some curiosity. What is meant by that? Because it doesn't make sense at all. It's so contrary to what I know is true. So thoughts and thought trains can be very deceptive. Albeit useful in many respects. I'm not condemning any of it. There's never condemnation. I may sound that way. I don't want to convey that impression that anything is condemned. Concentration, that this is better than that, and fall into this opposing camp psychology. We're free to examine anything together and alone. And there's tremendous energy in this, to find out for oneself, alone or together. Being together doesn't mean someone else can do it for one. We still have to see it for oneself. But sometimes when two people are together or a group is together, there seems to be more energy generated. By which I'm not saying you have to come together in a group in order to have the energy to. That's thought, linking stuff together again. To fulfill its habitual cause. So to the question, if someone came here who was entirely new, had never been to a spiritual training center, would you give them a practice? Of course not. It's long been ended giving people things. Which doesn't mean people are prevented or prohibited from practicing here, following breathing or so. Visualizations is up to each one what people want to do. But if someone comes and asks me about it, then we'll look at it. And I hope we're both free to say what we need to say, both of us. Then there's an aliveness in our relationship. And not a degeneration into dogmatism. The question ended with, how would one work without a practice, someone asked. I don't know. It seems from, if I can generalize from what I remember, that people who haven't been steeped in practices have an easier time just listening. They don't have this battle going on, should I practice or shouldn't I? which, have to be careful, doesn't mean it's easy when one hasn't had a practice. We have so many difficulties inwardly. All our programs which run unawares. Some more at the surface, some much deeper than the surface. How is one to make contact with them, be in touch with them? If the complaint is, or the objection, that without a concentrative practice, the mind just swirls around chaotically in reveries and dreams, fantasies, thought trains, why not sit with the chaos that we are at this instant, that this is what is going on? Because from where would we impose order? If one sits beside an agitated, muddy pool, and begins to stir around in it, it gets muddier, doesn't it? But if one doesn't abstains from doing, just there it is, it does clear up, unless there's more agitation, more wind, more rainstorm, and more is stirred up. So can we sit in the presence of being stirred up, agitated, chaotic feeling, without knowing what to do about it, and allowing here and there a moment of awareness or waking up to this chaos, in quotation marks, to take place, without immediately trying to seize the reins of this whole affair, which is part of this chaos. Which we are. And yet in this chaos there's listening to, breathing, a breath taken, a plastic flapping, heart beating, fingers tingling, people moving. It's all there. Who is to make heads or tails of it? We will end here for today.